is going to be freed because Trump is just not going to do, he has nothing to do, obviously. He can do nothing. It needs a society that's cooperative. It needs a government that is willing. That cannot be guaranteed by military power alone. Trump just got himself into a trap. What happened to be a strategic victory, military victory, is now a strategic trap for the United States. A few hours after the kidnap of Maduro, you could see from the press conferences and all the sayings of Trump and his and officials in his government, they're literally struggling to pass, to have control of narrative, and everything seemed to be falling apart. Earlier, few hours after the kidnap and the first press conferences that were had, a reporter asked Trump, "What are you going to do after this, after the kidnap of Maduro?" He was, uh, "We're going to control it. We are going to control it in a way that will benefit Venezuelans, and that and that and that." And he was asked about the other woman, the Nobel laureate Venezuelan, whom most of the times when a country wants to be colonized, it's always with the support of those who are uh, usually outside the government. They are always the willing collaborator against government from within. So Trump, when he was asked this about this woman, he was like, she's not respected in the country. She can't control, she can't lead the people of Venezuela." Of course, and that's true. She can't. You can't just take people from somewhere and just impose on the people and thinking things are just gonna walk out and flow. Yes, she can have the support of the United States, but how about control of the country, which is the most important thing? On realizing this, Trump was few hours after we see the vice president sworn in. She became the acting president, and she made a very strong statement that Maduro remains the president of Venezuela. He was kidnapped from his residence, and Venezuela would not go back to the occupation, the colonialism, the days of colonialism it came from. And interestingly, the current acting president, who is the vice president, she's from a family of revolutionary. Her father was unalive by in this same revolutionary activity or thing, leading up to what you have today as Venezuela. So it happens that it all appears that Trump is not only struggling with narrative in trying to convince people about his illegality, he's obviously struggling to control Venezuela. Forget what you're seeing on media. He's only trying to appear to be in control, but he isn't. It is really difficult. It is one thing to achieve victory militarily, it is another to really have control of the situation. Now he's saying about over 50 million barrel of crude is going to be supplied to the United States and they're going to sell it for market price. Well, Maduro initially agreed that he was willing to negotiate terms of crude supplied to the United States. Why he pulled this stunt is still not understood. Perhaps he think he could easily install a puppet for the people of Venezuela, but that actually it has really appeared to him that that was a daydream. it's not going to work, obviously. And the only reason the Venezuelan government is seem to be cooperating right now is because the president is under the custody of the United States. He's saying Trump said uh, the American oil company are going to move into Venezuela and bring back production. That's only possible with the government. Now, what is Trump going to do if uh, citizens of Venezuela militant decides to disrupt production? Obviously, these are part of calculation that oil companies are looking into. They cannot move in assets to a country that's unstable, where there's no certainty. Insurance companies are not going to insure them. They'll be taking loan at a very high risk. So this happened to be some kind of political victory for Trump, for his mega base actually. It makes the mega base feel good, but it's a problem. Businesses do not move in are not moved by political statements. They are moved in by reality. And the actions of Trump only create more uncertainty for these businesses. And no business want to do, no company want to do business in this situation. Yes, his friends can, his very rich friend can go in and scope in. They can thrive through in within this short period of Trump. They're going to achieve whatever it is they want to scope of wealth. They will do that very fast. But in the long run, it's just not sustainable at all. And what even make it more difficult for Trump is the opening statement of Maduro when he appeared before the court in the USA. He said, "My name is Maduro. I am the president of Venezuela. I was kidnapped from my home and I consider myself a prisoner of war." Although I was initially expecting he was not going to respond to anything because obviously he was illegally taken to the USA and his appearance before the court is illegal in the first place to begin with. And it is now putting the US judiciary in the eyes of the public. They're obviously not going to act. How they act is going to really tell of them. So Maduro is going to be freed because Trump is just not going to do, he has nothing to do, obviously. He can do nothing. Yes, he could have kidnapped him, but what next? What can he do after? Keep him in custody for how long? Arrest him for what crime? And the narratives seem to be changing every day from a narco terrorist, from supporting, allowing drugs to be shipped into the United States. How does that concern the foreign government? By the way, Nicolás Maduro said he's a decent man. A decent man. Obviously, he's not dealing in drugs and has nothing to do with drugs. And in fact, this guy has really done so well in the fight against narcotics. These drugs are not exactly being moved from Venezuela, they're moved from Colombia, places, Colombia, Mexico. These are where drug issues are really happening. Anyways, it's not actually about drugs, it's about control. It's about having control over the South American sphere. And they wanted to do that through oil. Things just, I mean, the oil itself, which the United States claim there's a blockade, doesn't seem to have stopped at all. Not even with the blockade. Instead, companies that are moving this oil out of Venezuela had changed registration to Russia. The oil tankers are now floating with the flag of Venezuela. Oh, sorry, of Russia. So it's really difficult to enforce the sanction. The most recent confrontation was a tanker, after loading crude from Venezuela, moved in and was being pursued by the US Coast Guard until it got to the Atlantic. And all of a sudden, you see Russian vessel, surface military vessel came in, and then a submarine, and they continue to pursue it. It is now becoming a diplomatic problem for the United States. Obviously, you can't just go on to arrest a Russian vessel. No, you can't just do that. And especially now that they're not having escorts, that's double problem for the USA. It is going to lead to a confrontation eventually if this continues. So Trump is in a mess. How he's going to clean up all these things? Well, we're just going to watch out to see how. But obviously, two things are certain. Maduro is going to be freed. He's going to come back to Venezuela and continue being the president of Venezuela. Or worse, he's going to be unalive. But that scenario, I mean, it will even put the United States in a more deeper problem. His case has become a global issue right now. Everybody is watching, seeing what will come out of it. So more than ever, they will be compelled to do the right thing. However, they may want to do not the right thing. As for the oil, the US having control over Venezuela oil, I mean, what is happening right now is just some bullying. And the only reason that is happening is because Maduro is under custody. Other than that, I just don't see how that is going to go. There's a limit to what military power can achieve. Military power can go in and achieve the immediate objective, but the long and intermediate objective, it needs political will, it needs a government that is willing to enforce certain cooperation from within its own society, and it needs willing citizens that will cooperate with this going forward. Because if you don't have it, I mean, look at the typical case of Nigeria, where we have Niger Delta militant. For years, the government tried everything, but of course, they realized that the best way forward was cooperation with cooperation, not in the sense that it is of advantage to the government. And ever since, we continue to have improved barrel production of crude per day. That is it. Businesses need certainty to grow. No insurance company wants to insure any business going into a society, a country that has crisis. And Donald Trump has just created crisis in Venezuela, a crisis that's going to really affect the crude output in Venezuela. So even the, the 15 million barrel of crude that Trump is talking about to be supplied to the United States is not certain. It's not certain because ever since all this whole blockade and this crisis began, production has really stalled. And one reason to tell you that, yes, perhaps production may have slowed, but oil has not stopped really. Evident is that the storage, Venezuelan storage, is not filled up yet. It tells you that there are still suppliers willing to, I mean, there are still buyers willing to take Venezuelan's crude, and it's actually flowing yet. It is, yes, the fact that United States wanted to have control over Southern America and to push the Chinese out of it, they might have achieved that in the short term, but it has not stopped China from having access to crude, to cheap crude. Obviously, companies that have registered their vessels to Russia right now are still shipping crude from Venezuela, but still, it doesn't stop Chinese buyers from buying. What just happened is Chinese business refiners had just, they changed buyer. they're still getting supplies from Iran. And what that means is the sanction, it makes the sanction from the West less effective on Iran. It means more money for Iran. It means propping up the Iranian economy. It means more development of military assets for the Iranian. And it makes it more difficult for the West, US and Israel, and the allies in Europe. It makes it more difficult to counter Iran and to dominate their hegemony over the Middle East. Be sure to subscribe and see you in the next video.